there's a silly debate going on in the electrical world, the electrician world, the trade world, as to which of these wire nut connectors or just wire connectors are the best, which one reigns supreme over the others. And the answer is none of them. They all have their specific purpose, their specific place in certain applications. Some of these excel in some situations and fail in others. So I think they're all worthy, they're all valid, and I use every single one of these in my home, on friends' projects, on clients and customers' projects. And I'm just going to go over where these excel, where they fail, and where I would use them. So let's just start with the Wago nuts. Let's talk about what makes these so fantastic. So, first off, they're incredibly easy to use, they're very welcoming. These are wonderful to use when you're trying to diagnose an issue with like a three-way switch. Sparky, the electrician, the old fella over at the Sparky channel, he demonstrates that so well. I never even thought to use these to diagnose three-way switch problems in clients' homes, but they do work really well for that. They appear to be well made. People have torture tested these, and they withhold or they withstand quite a bit of punishment. Another thing that's really fantastic about these specific wire nuts or wire connectors, I apologize, is there's information all throughout the product here, all over the connector on the sides. So it tells you, the gauge that it'll accept, 24 to 12. Okay. We got the 32 amps, it'll withstand that, for 450 volts. And then on the other side, it tells you how long how much insulation needs to be removed in order for this wire nut to accept it. So this right here, if I were to put this in there, I'd have to snip a little bit, but I'm not going to bother with that right now. And then on this side, 20 amps, 300 volts. It's just fantastic, just fantastic. And then this is how easy it is to use. You just move up the little door here, and then you're going to go ahead and put in a wire, clamp it down, and this is not going to go anywhere, you guys. This is not going to go anywhere. Very, very cool. And of course, you got really great feedback here, so you can make sure that you're always making a pretty solid connection. So yeah, again, well made, easy to use, provides great feedback. Now, where do I like to use these? I like to use these for light fixtures, and here's why. So if you go to like Home Depot or Lowe's, or you get something very inexpensive at Amazon, a lot of those light fixtures that use stranded wire, especially the very inexpensive light fixtures, bathroom lights, etc. They like to use the stranded wire because it's a lot less expensive. It's a lot easier for them to use and make. So when you're mating or connecting a solid wire with stranded wire, it can be a little challenging with the wire nut. It is certainly challenging with these pushing connectors. These do such a fantastic job. So for almost all the light fixtures that I do, all the lights that I install in someone's home, replacing a light, whatever the case is, or even if there's an issue with a light and I have to go up there and I have to fix it, I get rid of the wire nuts. I get rid of the old hardware and I put in the Wago nuts because I can see that solid connection back here, and it is just so much easier. I just open the door, close it, bam, I'm done. I just installed a bunch of brand new lights in my home. I'm going to be uploading a video doing that because there's a couple more that I need to do in the closet, and it's going to be fantastic, and hopefully it's going to be helpful to you guys. So yeah, that's where they excel. Now here's the weaknesses of these Wago wire nuts. Oh yeah, by the way, they're also made in Germany. These are made in Germany, so proper high IQ Europeans are creating these things. So this isn't cheap Chinese junk, even though it's mostly plastic. So here's some of the things that I've encountered with these. One, they're incredibly expensive. They're much more expensive than the competition, but that's to be expected because it is a high quality product. It is well made by smart people, and they just generally work, right? They just generally work really, really well almost all the time. So it's expensive. Also, the design. Again, it works, but it's kind of big. These are kind of big. These are significantly bigger than the ideal wire nuts. See, the ideal wire nuts, these are kind of tapered. These fit a lot more comfortably inside, older outlet boxes, or 2-3 gang boxes, etc. When you got a lot of wires and got a lot of stuff going on in there, and these are space saving is quite a luxury. This is just a square design, so you got that possibility of snagging on something or getting stuck somewhere, and it's not going to really move around too much, and that could be kind of a problem depending on what you're doing. And also these are, you got moving parts. You got moving parts. Just keep it real. When you introduce moving parts to something this small, there is a possibility that it just might break. There's just more of a possibility that could happen. That's a real reality. I personally have not experienced that, but just working with small parts, working with small moving things all the time, and just seeing, it's just a point of failure. But this is a well-made tool, a well-made, tool, I guess. Electrical wire device, and it just works, guys. It just works. But I mean, still, just be wary of that. Again, this is plastic. I don't know what kind of plastic it is. I'm going to be honest with you, but plastic is plastic. It gets really, really frail and brittle in the winter, and it's more likely to break during very cold temperatures. Yada yada. So yeah, just be mindful of that. All right, so that is the Wago nut. Light fixtures, really well made, expensive. Kind of bulky. Now let's talk about these ideal pushing connectors. These are fantastic. They're insanely easy to use. Let me go ahead and demonstrate to you how you would use something like this. So you just here, let me use a smaller one. You just push in just push it in. Just push it in, and once again, you get wonderful feedback on both sides. And if you have a volt tester or multimeter or something, there's a little slot in here right where I'm pointing, and you can go ahead and stick the little needle in there, and you can you can diagnose issues and whatnot. And removing it is can be a little bit challenging, but you just got it righty tighty, lefty loosey, and then you're just lightly pulling away. It does leave a little bit of bite marks. So I think Ideal does recommend, if you have to remove something like that, they don't recommend that you use these again. But I've reused these, when I was doing some testing, doing some troubleshooting, doing some demonstrations, and they've been reused multiple times, no issues. But always listen to what the manufacturer wants you to do. What they say is gospel. What the NEC code says is gospel. But I'm just telling you my experience. So yeah, the pushing connectors, they're bright, they're vibrant, and they are incredibly easy to use. They don't have any moving parts, which is fantastic. These don't cost that much. They are kind of pricey, but they don't cost that much. Now, where I would use these, outlets, switches, like light switches, home residential stuff, right? So like when you enter into a home, usually for most of us, you'll have a 4-gang box or a 3-gang box. You'll have a switch that controls the lights outside. You'll have a switch that controls maybe like a 3-way switch. And you have another light that controls like a chandelier or a light fixture right there at the entrance. And, you got a lot of neutrals in that box. You got a lot of ground wires in that box. And, a wire nut's going to take up a lot of space. Look at the difference between the wire nut and this Ideal pushing connector. That is quite a difference. Look at the difference between the Wago nut and this Ideal pushing connector. These have, again, they're tapered, right? They turn into like a little cone. They're smooth. These are easy to maneuver around in position strategically in a box. So again, you got that space saving. You got that simplicity. What is not to like about the Ideal pushing connector? These are fantastic. I would reach for these 10 times out of 10 over a Wago if I'm doing just a standard outlet box like that, like a 3-gang, 4-gang box. Just why not? Why not? And again, these are Ideal. These are from Ideal. They're very, very well made. I don't recommend going to anybody else other than Ideal. Ideal, Wago, 3M makes pretty good wire nut connectors. There's some generic brands that are sold at Lowe's, some sold at Home Depot, Ace Hardware, and they're all fine. They're all fine. Don't get the cheap Chinese junk on Amazon, guys. Go to the store, order them from the manufacturer. Just do what you got to do. But again, we're talking about your life here. If you buy the cheap stuff and then it fails, you're talking about house burning down. You're talking about, a room, electrical outlets, just being damaged and possibly damaging whatever's connected to it, like a computer, for example, or a printer or something expensive. Just get the right stuff. Now, let's talk about what I don't like about these Ideal wire nuts. Well, wish there would be an easier way to kind of remove wires. But again, if you know what you're doing, you shouldn't have to be removing them anyways. I don't like how, again, the Wago nuts provides all this information here on the sides. These ideal pushing connectors don't appear to be providing any sort of information. It's just like if you buy these in like a small package, or you get the little bottle that comes with like 100 or 200 or whatever, you know that those will have a lot of information, a lot of really good stuff. Ideal, you got to put as much information as you can. How much insulation do you need to remove in order to make a proper connection? How many amps will this accept? What wire gauge is acceptable for use with these pushing connectors? So it doesn't provide any of that at all. Those are generally my biggest pet peeves. These are again all this stuff right here is perfectly acceptable for use uh, out in the real world. They're NEC certified, they're NEC approved, whatever you want to call it. And there's been a lot of people who did torture tests on these. They withstand quite a bit of punishment. However, always use this the way that it was intended to be used. So yeah. What else? What else? I mean, I just have so much to say about these that are positive, and I have very little complaints, you guys. I have very little complaints. Yeah, I love them. I love them a lot. When I first started getting into this trade, I started going with these ideal pushing connectors first. So I have the most experience with these, and I never really bothered with the ideal stuff because they don't really sell. There's like a couple stores that sell them here in the valley, and they're like way out of my way, and it just was never worth it. So I ordered some online, and they came to my house, and I inspected them, and they're good. They're good. But yeah, I have a soft spot for ideal. Not only that, ideal products are fantastic, by the way. So yeah, these are where these would not be good though. I said they would be great for outlets and switches and stuff. These would be terrible for use with light fixtures or anything that requires stranded wire. Now, I know that might not be fair because Ideal does advertise that you can use the pushing connectors with stranded wire. And like this is the Ideal page, you guys. This is Ideal's website, and they're clearly demonstrating right here that they're using this pushing connector. And I see 2 solid wires in there and a stranded. So this looks like a light fixture installation. This would look like a light fixture installation. That's exactly what appears to be happening in this image alone. And yeah, honestly, guys, maybe it's experience, maybe it's just fear or whatever. But I've never had success using stranded wire with the ideal pushing connector. So that's where the Wago comes in. The Wago is going to come in those specific situations. All right. So now let's talk about the last guy here, which are these traditional wire nuts. These wire nuts have evolved quite a bit. They kind of used to have this boring and bland cone shape, and then they started making them texturized, so you have these lines all throughout it, so you can grip them a lot easier. And then there's other wire nuts where they have these little wings here, and the good thing about these wings, if you have this ideal wire nut tool, this thing cuts wire. You can make loops. You can determine how much insulation needs to be removed. There's a little measuring thing right there. It's got a really comfortable grip, and this is how one of these advanced wire nuts would interface with it. So once you have everything tightened up, you got your wires. Whatchamacallit? They're twisted together. You just go ahead and you start righty tighty lefty loosey. And yeah, I mean, it's just it's the good ones, they bite into the wire quite easily, and then they don't come out. Oh well, maybe not that one. I think this one does. Yeah, see, look at that. It just bites into it. So this is a really good one. These are like from Commercial Electric. These are kind of cheap. Again, like a Home Depot generic brand, but I mean they work. They work really well. They're really well made. But where would you use? Let's talk about the pros of these wire nuts really quick. The traditional ones. They're inexpensive. They are proven technology. Once they work, if you do everything correctly, it's going to work just fine, you guys. So that's like the ultimate benefit here is like the cost, the abundance. And not only that, when we are talking about devices or appliances or other large electrical devices in the house that are being used, they use a lot thicker cables. And the ideal pushing connector or the Wago nut might not be acceptable. We're talking about much bigger gauges than what you would be able to use with these wire connectors. So you're going to have to learn how to use these if you're going to be working in the trades. If you fear these or you got to stick up your ass about these traditional wire connectors, get over it, sweetheart, because you are going to have to use them. Sometimes cost is a thing. Sometimes, a client can't accept for me to use these. I'll be like, okay, this is what I'm going to use. This is the cost, and if I like them, I'll barter with them. They're like, oh, well, it costs too much. It's like, okay, well, I'll knock off a little bit and I'll just use the cheap shit. But even then, these aren't necessarily cheap because I use the Ideal brand. I love Ideal. Their wire connectors are the best, in my opinion, these traditional ones at the very least, and I love how they interfere with this specific tool. God. So yeah, they're cheap. They're relatively easy to use if you know what you're doing. But let's talk about some of the weaknesses of these. Again, these are kind of big. I mean, even this small one right here, it's just so much bigger than the Wago connector. It is so much bigger than even this large, what is this four wire connector here. It's so much bigger than these. So they take up a lot of space. I don't like that about that. I don't like that about these connectors. Not only that, to use these, you need to have professional training, in my opinion. You need to be a little bit more skilled to use this, because if you're going to be combining, these, let's say these two wires, I know you would never do that, but if you were combining these two wires, you'd have to get out the linesman, you'd have to make the appropriate twists, and these would have to be constricted around each other. I think they want like 3 or 4 times, wrapped around each other. And then once you can see that you have a solid connection, and once you make that little appropriate snip so it's flat at the top, then you're going to go ahead and get your wire connector and make sure that it is tight. Like right now, I barely twisted it on. Like I was just half-assing it, but this is not going anywhere, you guys. This is not going anywhere. These are pretty damn good if you do it correctly. Some people like to, just combine the wires like this, and then they just start, twisting it on, and then they get their tool or whatever, and they just keep going and going and going, and you'll see these wires constricted around each other, and you have a nice little loop, the little coils or whatever you want to call it. I don't know why I keep forgetting, but yeah, that's these wire connectors. But yeah, they do have a place, especially when you're working with appliances. That's a big one, guys. It's a big one. Oven, microwave combo. Goodness. It's just stuff like that. Or like an electric stove. Sometimes they use bigger gauge wires, and they're pretty fat and juicy. And you can't use these connectors. It's a really big one. And some people are like, oh, they don't appear that secure or whatever. Yeah, if you don't know what you're doing, they're not going to be that secure. Yeah, fair enough, fair point. But I do know what I'm doing, and I can do all those things. And it's just, again, I can excel with all of these. Not a problem, guys. It's not a problem. So yeah, those, that's just my personal experience, you guys. Like, again, if I could avoid it, I'm not going to use these dealing with very common switches and light fixtures and stuff. Especially like the light fixtures, man. Sometimes there's just no space up there. Maybe in some of the newer homes, they do make it a lot easier, but generally speaking, with these, not so much, man, not so much. My home was built in the late '80s, so when I was born, like in '89, it was Jesus Christ, yeah, those boxes are just they're so dirty, and there's just no space. They're so small, and the light fixtures are kind of dumpy. So when you're replacing it and you're doing everything brand new, you got to be very, very careful. Because I can't use these. There's just not enough space. The light fixture doesn't mount properly. There's like a gap. But as soon as you get organized and you use the right tools, it's a whole different ball game, man. So yeah, I just want to know what you guys think. What's your experience been using any of these wire connectors? In my opinion, they all have their place. They're all great. But at the end of the day, if you don't know what you're doing, you're going to make mistakes. It doesn't matter if you're using the easiest one to use or the hardest one to use. All right. I hope you enjoyed the video. Leave a like, leave a comment, all this stuff. Give me money. Peace.